Hello, and welcome to Positive Fandom. I'm your host, Rrr Mmmm. Today I'll be talking to Stubble McShave about the first 3 episodes of the Wheel of Time live action TV series. We will be doing a non-spoiler spoiler review. Hello, Stubble. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, it's finally here, right? The first 3 episodes of the live action Wheel of Time series. It feels like we've been waiting for this for quite some time, and here it is. Um, and the first 3 episodes are Leave Taking, episode 2 is Shadows Waiting, and episode 3 is A Place of Safety. And you and I have talked a little bit about the Wheel of Time. And from what I understand, this series may cover more than one of the books in the Wheel of Time series, correct?
Yeah, it's the story is the first book, but they have included things from the second book and maybe something from the third book as well. Like the Aes Sedai is not really featured in the first book; it's been incorporated from the second book,
Right.
and then they follow they take liberties with the plot line to some degree.
Interesting. And, when this series was announced, I noticed that the showrunners made it sort of like a fun affair with puzzles and trailers. And we looked at the trailers already, and we both agreed that there is a lot to look forward to in the series, with each of us hoping to see very specific things. So, so far for me, a lot of the things that I was looking for, I saw, like, for example, as far as I'm concerned, the actors have done a great job so far. And the cinematography was one of the things that I was looking forward to. And I got a sense from watching at least the first 3 episodes that they did focus on picking a beautiful location for the story. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, the scenery is great, and um, I have some issues with some of the choices they have made, but in general, I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, and I think that they definitely wanted to pick a landscape that was beautiful, and clearly the shots and everything look wonderful. I also felt that in regards to the actors, I felt so far Rosalind Pike has done a wonderful job, and so have the other actors. As far as I'm concerned, I really liked it. What were your opinions about the actors so far and the roles that they're playing?
I think they do a decent job. I think in the first episode they haven't really found the roles 100%, but I think as it goes on, they grow into the roles. I think, but I think they do a good job.
Now, I also noticed that there's a use of magic, which is something that I was very eager to see how they were going to do. And we saw a little bit of a hint of that in the trailers, but here, and I kind of was trying to keep track of it, although I don't think I did a very good job. I felt like I managed to find at least 3 or 4 different types of use of the one power, so to speak. And I don't even know, like, for example, whether they were actually all in the series, in the novels, but one of the things that I found very interesting was there was a scene where Moraine is actually bathing, and she uses some of her powers to heat water. And I thought to myself, is that in the book? I don't remember that part of her doing that in the book, but perhaps it was. But if anybody was going to know whether it was in the books, you would know. Was that a scene that was added, or is that from the stories?
Oh, that's an added scene, but I think they added that because in the later books they use the power to heat the tea kettle and heat their whatever they need. So they use the power for utilitarian things, not just to fight Trollocs and stuff, but just to sometimes they use it to wash clothes, and so it was in the same type of stuff that they use the power later on. It's not just as a weapon or healing. It's to make things simple to heat the bath water if it's too cold, for example. But just that scene wasn't from the book.
And that was one of the other things that I wanted to see in the series, or at least one of the things I was anticipating was seeing the relationship between Moraine and her, is it her warder?
Yes.
who obviously from the series, it seems like somewhat of a more intimate relationship, which I was kind of curious about, and I think we might discuss a little bit later. But I wanted to know, and I was very curious as to how they were going to portray that relationship, because they're together so often, and he pretty much takes care of her, in a manner of speaking. And so I think that they kind of, wanted to show that scene to show that they were very, very close, and
Yeah.
that it wasn't sort of like just an ordinary relationship that you would have with someone. It was like their companions, in addition to that. So that was very interesting to see. What were some of the things that you were hoping to see and may have seen in the first 3 episodes, Stubble?
I wanted to see how the two rivers, or Emmonsfield, or in the books it calls Emmonsfield. In Two Rivers they simplified to in the series they simplified to Two Rivers, because Two Rivers is actually the area, the region that's called, but they've called it that. But I wanted to see how that was portrayed, and I got the sense of this was a how should I put it? It feels like taken from a story. It feels from out of this world in some way, and I thought that was I liked that bit. It was an escapism in the whole thing, and I liked the portrayal of the village. And also I liked the battle scenes in the use of the one power, and even the physical the physical stuff between the fighting, and I thought that was well done, and those were my two favorite things in the first episode.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I agree with you. I felt that the village looked incredible, and they did such a great job of recreating that for us, because we wanted to see that. This is what we are watching the series for, is to see the recreation of the village, and of course the battles, which included magic, which is what I wanted to see. And we got a chance to see Moraine, sort of go ahead and use the one power, which I thought looked incredible. I thought that the way that they did it, the way that they manifested the one power on the screen, and using, that sort of circle of it looked like a, I don't even know how to describe it, like a ring that would form around her in blue. I thought it looked very, very impressive. And you got a sense of the scope of the power,
Yeah,
using that blue, ethereal kind of light to show, the breadth of the power, but also the direction of the power as she was using it. And I thought that they did a very good job, and I think it gave people a sense of, what exactly is going on, because I'm not quite even sure. I don't think that they've ever described the power using light. I mean, has that
no,
ever been something so it's not in there, but they had to show something
yeah,
to demonstrate that there was, a power that was being used, this magic that was being used. And I think it looked really good, on the screen. And I think it was relatable, and people could see, what was happening with the power, and what it meant. Um, so overall for me, I I liked the first 3 episodes, and I understand how you mentioned before that a lot was left out. In your, let's say in your non-spoiler analysis, what were some of the things that you felt were missing in, or you would have liked to have seen in the first 3 episodes that you felt should have been there?
I think there was a lot of scenes that were left on the cutting room floor because it felt very jarring, the editing of the first episode. And I've heard from people that the showrunner wanted to do a substantial longer first episode, but they had to cut away a lot of stuff. There were whole scenes where they were in different rooms in different settings that we never saw, and So I think they, because of time constraints, they had to get all the necessary information in there. But that also made it a little bit jarring when it came to the editing for me. But I get it. They have to tell a very huge story in a short amount of time, and then things have to go. But that was one of the things I saw a potential problem with that. I think the second and the third episode had much better editing and much better. It was not as jarring when it came to those things. And then I think the actors hadn't really found their place, hadn't found their roles in the first episode. I think they were still growing into them to some degree, but still, some of the scenes were really good, but some felt a little bit off for me. But that may be just because of having read the book so many times that I have preconceptions about what it should look like. So, but you have to remember that the TV series isn't the book. It's impossible to do the book, but so they have to reinvent stuff to make it work for the new medium. So I get that, but there were some things I wanted to see that I didn't get to see. But yeah, that's life.
Yeah, that is unfortunate that that happened. And honestly, I have to agree with you in regards to the first episode. Um and they tried to pack as much as they could in that first episode uh to kind of speed things along so that they could get to I guess another segment. But it was a lot to absorb, that first episode. And if you didn't know anything about the story, um, I think that there were certain things that probably should have been included just to explain things for someone who isn't familiar or is just watching it, because there's going to be millions of viewers who have never read the books and they're going to be watching the show for the first time.
Yeah,
So they don't
and
know any. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and this is unconfirmed, but this is just something I heard, that the showrunner wanted a double episode for episode one, and then he wanted 10 episodes for the first season, but he got 8 1-hour episodes, so he had to constrain things and have to cut things, and so I get it, but I wish it could have been a little bit smoother when it came to the editing and such things.
You know, Sometimes when I see a situation like this in a series, I often wonder whether or not they're going to come out with like a director's cut where it includes those scenes that everybody wants to have, or that the showrunner wanted to include. And I'm kind of hoping that we eventually might get something like that so that we can get all those details and missing elements that should have been in there. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of holding out for that idea. I'm happy for what we've gotten so far, but I understand what you're talking about. So, for me, like I said, overall I'm happy with it, but I understand what you're talking about, in regards to how clearly it is less than what it should be. Um, so what I wanted to do at this point is to go into the spoiler version of this review so that we could talk about some very specific things that I noticed especially in episode one. And you probably noticed them too. And I want to ask you some questions about some of these things. Um, Mainly because of the idea of looking at it from the point of someone who's watching the program and hasn't read the books, which is the majority of people who will probably be watching this program over the next, 4 or 5 years as it stays on Prime, and more interest develops over the series because of this live action series. But uh, I think some of the questions that I have are very interesting in the sense that I wonder how the viewer is going to know, oftentimes, what exactly is going on uh, in some of the scenes. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was about how you had mentioned about what the dragon is and how it's an important part of the story. And I remember you mentioning that he's like a messiah type figure. And in part of this, we are shown, especially in the beginning, that some of these men, if it's a man who has the ability to wield the one power, there are side effects that were placed on him, so to speak, placed on men who use the one power. And it's kind of unfortunate, but it's just the reality of the story. And we can see from the very, let's say, in the opening scene, that there's a man who clearly is able to yield the one power, but he has, sort of like a manic episode, where he is driven mad. And there is this woman, I think it's Landrin Gural, and her
Uh,
sister, I'm assuming are Aes Sedai. Are they Aes Sedai, Stubble?
Leandrin Sedai.
Yes. Sorry,
Yeah.
Leandrin Sedai and her sisters are trying to prevent this young man from wielding Satan, or the male half of the one power. At least that's how from what I understand. And ironically, at the same time, we see a scene of Moraine and Lan looking for the next dragon, so to speak. Sort of like up on a shelf or a cliff somewhere, where they kind of maybe witness what's going on, and Moraine says, well, he's not the dragon. And so I think that, the explanation doesn't come for quite some time in the story, what all of that means, or even what exactly is going on. I mean, while it's true that Landrin does say this was meant for women, or something to that degree, it doesn't quite, it's not entirely clear, what's going on in that first scene. So I watched the episode with a few friends who didn't know anything about the Wheel of Time, and I had to explain this to them. And then once I explained it to them, they understood what was going on. And I did just want to ask you, it's like, do you think that that scene kind of accomplished what it was supposed to? Because I mean, could you tell that the power was something that would drive, a man insane? How could anyone tell by looking at that that's what was going on?
Yeah. Uh, you have the before you have that sequence, you had the bit where Moraine puts on her clothes, and there is we hear her voice where she explains that the dragon is born again, and all the things about going mad and all that stuff. So you get us kind of an explanation before, but I know that there are a lot of people who are a bit confused there. But I guess we will get more information in the later episodes to flesh out that scene. And I would say of the three cold opens we had from the three first episodes, this is my least favorite of the three. But uh, yeah, I think that some people didn't connect the dots really because it wasn't spelled out to a large degree. So yeah, I don't know if that was the question.
That is the question. That is exactly
Yeah,
what I'm referring to. And I think that they picked the best scenes of, let's say, the explanation, but clearly that could have been a little bit more drawn out to explain that part. And um, you know, then we find ourselves sort of like the women's circle area and
yeah,
the wisdoms. And I did like this scene where everybody was kind of walking towards the river.
yes,
And of course, the women are in charge of the Two Rivers government. And Egwene is going to be she got her first braid that connected her to the village. And, it's important because although I'm not entirely sure whether the viewer got the sense that the place is governed by women, so to speak, and that they treat and take care of people in the village. What did you think about that?
I have a few thoughts about that. It's true that the women's circle is a powerful deciding factor in the village, but there's also something that they didn't mention in the TV series. That's the village council, and that the village council is made up by the men and women, and there's a balance between the two ruling bodies in the village. And I I I would have liked that they just had mentioned that with maybe just a sentence. Didn't have to depict it, but I would have liked to seen it. in some way. But sure, the women's circle are a very powerful influence on the village, and there's there's a difference between the books and the TV series is that Robert Jordan, when he wrote the books, he was very, very subtle with his, that female are more in power politically in the world. Here they are very direct with it in the TV series. So I liked the women's circle, all of all of those things that were in the TV series, but I also would have liked to see the balance that is in the books with the village council. And but I liked the thing that was shown, but I would like to have seen more.
Yes, I agree with that. And so, of course, Egwene is now, part of, let's say, like it's a rite of passage for her when she sort of dives into the river, and I thought that was a nice, visual, because it certainly grabs your attention right away, as they kind of toss her into the river. And then we see another scene where, I guess it's Rand and his father, or maybe I'm getting this out of order, but it says the next scene in the opening part of the first chapter of the Wheel of Time. And now they're sort of very quickly at that scene. And we also get to see Rand and Tam and his father, which obviously are two very important characters in the story.
Yes.
And then shortly after that, Perrin and Mat. What did you think of that scene as they introduced Rand and Tam?
Yeah, it was nice to see Rand and Tam on the road, because that's the opening sequence in the first chapter in the book. We get to see how the wind blows around and catches his cloak, and then we focus in on those two characters. And it's interesting for Michael McAllatton, who plays Tam, because in Game of Thrones he was the worst kind of father, and in Wheel of Time he's the ultimate dad. He's the perfect dad. So his role has spanned the worst and the best of the dads. So no, but I liked the introduction. Of course, as everything, I would have liked to see more, but I thought they had a good exchange between them. And did you say Perrin and Mat as well?
Well, yes. I mean, shortly after that, we get introduced to those two characters, and we pretty much find ourselves, I guess, in Emmons Field, preparing for the festival, which is the next day. And at this point, Perrin, is with Eliana. They're actually in a pub, right? And they're talking about everything that's going on. And at some point, someone tells Perrin to go back into the ironworks because Eliana is not here. And there's some, unusual tension between he and his wife. And I don't remember in the books whether they were married or not. But and then, of course, Tam is waiting to hear back from Egwene. How did the ceremony go, and how is everything, going on with her? And he hasn't heard back yet. But what's interesting is at some point at the table, and I think it was Perrin, he mentions that there's war going on. And you can get, what's great about this scene is that you get a sense of that this town doesn't, is just a happy, beautiful place where they're pretty much untouched by what goes on outside of their town. And it's, everybody is content, and life is beautiful, and it's really sort of like an idyllic place to live. And so for someone to immediately say, or let's say within the first 30 minutes of the series, that there's war going on, something's going to be shaking up the town soon with that kind of a comment. And I do remember, if memory serves me correct, Stubble, Perrin does accidentally kill Eliana in the book.
Yeah, her name is Lila, I think.
Yes. Right.
and they are not married in the books. He's a single in the book, but later on in the book series, he says uh, because he spots Layla at a later date, and he said, "If I stayed, I would have married that girl," or something to that effect. So, because they aged up the characters a few years, because Perrin has a lot of internal uh, monologues in the books, and you can't portray that in a TV series to the same degree. So they have to give an external thing that explains to the viewers why he's hesitant about violence and why uh, he's brooding and why he's the way he is. And so they created that character for that purpose. And there's a certain controversy with having a female character die because of uh, getting the male arc going, the male character arc. So I don't remember the term for it, but there was some that criticized that. But I understand the reasoning for it, and I think it serves its purpose. That was one of the changes that I knew from before seeing it, so that wasn't so jarring for me. I thought I thought that I would dislike it more than what I did when I saw it. That was not the thing that was not the change that I disliked the most, but um, it serves its purpose for telling the story in this medium. So, and concerning rumors of war from neighboring countries, that information came from Padam Fain in the books, but here there's a rumor in the inn, so we get the same information uh, in that way. And I like the mood in the inn. I like the jovial nature, and everyone was waiting for Egwene to arrive after her ceremony, and everyone celebrated that she has reached marital age and so on. So yeah, I liked that sequence.
It was very nice, and I think it came across very well, and you could tell everyone was happy for her. And of course, you could also see that Rand and her had some, business to talk about. He had to reach her, and he wanted to figure out what's going on. And at some point during the night, or during this scene, Moraine shows up,
Yeah,
and everybody suddenly becomes unsettled. I
right.
mean, you can hear a pin drop in that pub. Um, and there and could, and I actually do want to ask this question too. It seemed like I don't know whether it was Nynaeve or another character who says that they feel things would be better with Moraine around.
Oh, I don't remember that bit.
Okay.
Um, because I sensed between Nynaeve and Moraine there's instant hostility, because
Yes.
the first thing, because Nynaeve, something you have to understand about Nynaeve's character is that she is in a place, the highest authority more or less in the village, after the in the books after the mayor, but she's the highest female authority in the village, but she's so young, so everyone thinks that she's just a village girl, and they go to someone older, and so she is very insecure in her inside herself. So
Right.
that's because that's why she acts out, and that's why she is very aggressive at times. And so Moraine goes immediately to another woman to and bypass her, and from that moment on, she's a little pissed off at Moraine. And there are several other reasons as well, but yeah. Um, what was the original question? I just lost it.
Well, I just noticed that there seemed to be one person who had said that if Moraine was there, then things would be better with her around, or perhaps I misinterpreted it. But what I was going to say is that as Perrin and Matt seem to work through their personal difficulties with their families, Egwene's mother talks to her about the role that the Aes Sedai can play in battle. And I think Rand's father also pitches in about it. And it also seems like at some point Egwene speaks to Rand and she has some big news for him about her relationship with Nynaeve and what Nynaeve sees as a potential for her as being a wisdom. But it means that she, like, her relationship with Rand would be, compromised.
Yeah, because if she's going to be her apprentice, then it means that she will become a wisdom, and a wisdom does generally not marry or have children and so on. They serve a, in quotes, a higher calling, or or something to that degree. They are authority figure and unbiased and so on. When it comes to the family relations with Matt, that's one of the things I didn't like. That's one of the changes because he's very his father is very respected and a very good man in the books, and here they've made him into some kind of you know, a low life who who screws around with other women in the village, and his mother has become drunk and so on. And I didn't care for that change. That was the thing that I disliked the most. But I understand why they did it, but I wish they hadn't.
Well, it's interesting because it almost seems like it doesn't fit in this story, does it?
No, I think they did it to further Matt's character, that he really cares for his, in this case, his sisters, but later on his friends. That he, so like we saw Matt steal a bracelet from a girl, but the only reason he stole it was because he was out of money. He wanted to get a lanterns for his sisters. So he didn't steal it for his own sake. He did it to. He will do everything for his friends, but and in setting that up, they set up that his parents were no good parents, so to speak. And I didn't like that bit. I thought, because if you just read the first book, you haven't met his parents, but you will meet them later on. I won't say in which book and in which context, but um, his father is a very good man and a respect man, and I didn't like their portrayal. I only hope that they will have a character arc where they go from bad to good. If you similar to what they did in Lord of the Rings with Faramir, because in the books he's good all the time, but he has a character arc from bad to good in the movie. So I hope they do the same thing with Abel and Natty Caughton, Matt's parents.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, and that's definitely something that we have to look for as the series goes on. And one of the next scenes is the one that we talked about before, and it is a scene that I was eager to see, although perhaps not in this context. And it is where Moraine is obviously bathing, and her Lan comes in, and he joins her in the same tub. And clearly it's an intimate moment. It's not sort of like they're strangers or anything. um and this is one of the times, or one of the first times, that I see the use of the one power, where, as I mentioned before, Lan mentions that the water is a bit cold, and Moraine uses her one power to warm the water up to the temperature that is more comfortable for him. And so this was something that, I think answers my question, although if I could ask you the question, what exactly is the relationship between the two of them outside of him being her warder, like being obligated to take care of her? And also, does he have the one power as well?
No, he hasn't. He doesn't have the one power. Their relationship is that they are not sexually connected in any way. They are connected in like best friends, and they can sense each other's emotions and also locations. And he get added strength and stamina and so on in the bonding. And the use of the one power, that's bathing scene isn't in the books, but it shows the utilitarian uses of the one power later in the books when they heat their tea water or dry their clothes or whatever with the power. So it's not just used for killing things and healing things. It's used for making life more simple and more enjoyable as well. And did I cover everything there? I don't think I did.
Yes, yes, I think you did. I mean, I think it was important for you to mention that that they are friends.
Yeah,
And while it was a very intimate scene, I mean, it's not that I felt that the scene might have given the wrong idea, but they are in a bath together, and that is
yeah,
kind of, it depends on how friendly you are, and I guess what country you're in, because certain countries people do bathe together. So
yeah,
that's not unheard of. Like whole families will do that. Um, but I just was curious because there did seem to be this, intimate connection between them, which might be different and deeper than, let's say, like a spousal connection. This might be something where their souls are connected, or something, very uh, transcending in a sense of a relationship. So I just found it very interesting and very intriguing in a sense, to have that connection with another person.
yeah.
Seems very interesting to have. So,
But
um,
but but I should mention that there are other Aes Sedai and that treat the warders differently. Some of them are married and or have other more intimate relationships in other ways, and some of them, because as a warder you can be compelled to do stuff. Sometimes the Aes Sedai can compel a warder to do something, but Moraine and Lan doesn't have that. There's complete confidence and trust between them, and but there are other cases where the Aes Sedai can compel the warder to do something that they don't want to do.
interesting. Very, very interesting. Uh, so, as this is happening, or around the same time that this is happening, we do see sort of an ominous figure on horseback, kind of ride into the area or near the area, let's say, of the two rivers. And correct me if I'm wrong, is this the shadow spawn?
This is one type of shadow spawn.
Mhm.
So you have the Trollocs that are the, what should we call them, the bulk of the army of the dark forces, so to speak, and they are breeding Trollocs in breeding grounds somewhere else, and ev- like 1 in 100 uh, there's a midroll or one of these cloaked figures as a result of the breeding. So they are, I think they call it that, because the Trollocs are a combination of humans and animals, genetic experiment kind of thing, and sometimes more of the human side is the result of of them breeding, and that also follows more of the twisted dark side thing in this individual. So it's one form of shadow spawn, but they are not as common as the Trollocs, and they are more dangerous in several ways.
Hmm. Well, it's very interesting and definitely something that I have to see or look for in the future. And then, and I'm sorry for being maybe discontinuous in what's going on in the story, but there's some point we see a character named Padden Fane,
Yes.
who rolls into town for bell time. It's maybe the next day, the bell time festival, and he's disguised as a peddler, or is
Uh,
he?
he is a peddler, but he has other masters as well, so to speak. He's he's not entirely what he seems. He's a human in every aspect, but he's not entirely what he seems. He serves another purpose, so to speak. but he is a peddler. He goes from village to village peddling stuff. But he is, yeah. I think we'll leave it at that.
Yes. And then at this point, we see Nynaeve with after speaking with Moraine, and they have their little tit for tat about her age and her abilities. Nynaeve meets with or is with Egwene, and they're listening to the wind, but they can tell that something is off. Now, what exactly are they hearing? Do we ever know exactly what they're hearing? Are they hearing the voices of the Dark One? What are they hearing exactly in the wind?
In the books, Nynaeve often says that she hears a storm coming, but there's not a storm on the horizon. And often in the next chapter, something bad happens. So I guess this is a version of that. They hear a storm coming or something like that, but in the TV show, they have to make it more explicit, I guess.
Okay,
So
but I think that they
the,
would have to verbally tell us, because that's one of her abilities, is it not?
yes. Many of the wisdoms in the different villages had the ability to listen to the wind in order to predict weather and so on. And yeah, that's connected to using the one power and but we'll see more of that later on, I guess.
Yes. And just like that, we're introduced to the concept where Moraine talks about, I mean, she mentioned looking that the earlier gentleman was not the dragon, but then we're introduced to the concept of Moraine and Lan looking for the dragon, and Lan tells her that they have to leave immediately. And then of course it's at that point that unfortunately the village is attacked by the Dark Army, these Trollocs, which are these, this combination of human and animal. um and it's quite an attack. It's very sudden, and they're not expecting it at all. Or if it was the case where Egwene and Nynaeve heard something was off, perhaps they weren't expecting a vicious attack like this. So the attack happens, and what happens is, let's say after they get over the initial shock of what's happened and what's going on, um, Moraine then gets to work and defends the village using the one power. But Tan tells her, there's just too many of them, and that they have to flee the village right away. And at some point, she explains the prophecy to Rand, Tom, I hope I'm saying all the names, Perrin, and Egwene, and explains that they have to leave, and that one of them is the dragon. I hope I'm saying the right scene.
Yeah,
And that the Trollocs are coming for them,
yeah,
and that they have to flee immediately, and that they're coming with her and Lan.
yeah. That felt a little bit abrupt for me, but um, I go back to the books because that's my frame of reference for these things. But in the books, they leave in the middle of the night because they just leave a message and so on. So it felt a bit strange that there wasn't more protest from the rest of the villagers when they just got up and left. And I would have liked to see some uh, more goodbyes and so on, because it was very abrupt. I think there are several scenes that's on the cutting room floor from that bit, but uh, they have to move things along. You can't stay on a chapter just talking about stuff like you can in the books. You have to move things along, and when they're limited to 55 minutes and they have 20 minutes just being a big battle, then they have to move things along pretty quickly. And
Yes.
I thought the battle was pretty. I was pleased with how the battle was depicted as well.
I was too. And if I remember correctly in the book, after Rand's father gets attacked, he has this injury, and Rand refuses to leave until he can get the wound healed.
Yeah.
And that's when we learn that a wound from a Trolloc is different than a regular wound. And
Yeah. There's
and
like an unclean blade, so to speak. It's poisoned, the wound.
yes, and that's when, of course, in the book, Moraine does heal the wound, but there was this thing where Rand didn't want to leave without his father, and there was this real connection that they had together, where he was very conflicted of leaving his father in that condition, or even leaving his father at all, because they were
Yeah.
so close. And so, we do see her heal the father's wound, but at some point, there's where he is able to kind of leave very quickly, and it is a little different, for me, seeing his relationship with his father and how close they were, for him to kind of just be able to leave that quickly in that way. So you're right, they leave in the middle of the night, and if I'm correct, um I can't remember. Egwene kind of joins them. Does Egwene say she's coming with them, or does Moraine say you're coming with us in the book?
In the book, there's like Egwene is uh, sneaks up and joins them, so to speak, and Moraine says that she can come along because otherwise she'll rouse the village, and they'll know that they're leaving. She probably has an ulterior motive that she can sense that Egwene is a potential very powerful channeler. Spoiler for the later part of the series, I suppose, a little bit late. But she wants to bring her along to make her become an Aes Sedai as well. So I think she's uh, at first she doesn't want her to join them, but when Egwene is there, then there's she's happy that she comes along so she can possibly become an Aes Sedai later on.
Yes, and I guess this was the best way to do it, because they didn't. It would be too complicated maybe to explain how that would happen, to just say, okay, you four are the ones that they're looking for, and you're coming with me. And it's very interesting because as they're in the process of leaving, excuse me, they have this shot, sort of like in the valley. Am I
Yeah,
right, Stubble? Um, where you can see these lights sort of like coming down the valley or coming down the side of the mountain. And they
yeah,
ask, Moraine, what is that? And Moraine is like, that's the Dark Army. And of course, they're coming for the four of them. And that's when it becomes very clear that they're pretty much on the run, aren't they?
yeah. Uh, then you need a visual thing for the TV series. So, uh, and uh, one can ask, how does the four young people know that they're after them? That's never explained in the TV series. That's just what she tells them. While in the books, she lays out the reasons why, uh, which houses were attacked and so on. You can't do that in a TV series. That would take way too much time, too much screen time. But so you just have to buy it and get on with the story. Don't have to how do you call it? Um, I don't find the right word right now, but you don't have to make it as clear in the TV series as you need in a book.
I agree. And so that's pretty much everything from the first episode of the Wheel of Time television series. And let's go ahead and we've spoken for an hour. Do you want to continue on to the second episode, or would you like to continue that in the
I,
next segment?
I think we can do that in the next segment.
Okay. All right. In that case, thank you for joining us for this first episode review, non-spoiler, spoiler review of the Wheel of Time television series. And please join us again for the second episode, where we talk about episode 2 in the Wheel of Time television series coming up. Thank you, Stubble, for joining me.
Thanks.
And everybody remember, be kind.